Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the lecture. You heard the topic, and we are meeting in order to highlight the power of medical herbs if processed and prepared properly, and what benefit they represent for the patient in his treatment. Preparations on the basis of cannabis and their use in translation medicine. Well, I would like to share with you this quote. It really says that Goethe said, "In living nature, nothing would happen which would not be connected with the whole." So it is not only a small diagnosis or part of a diagnosis, it always affects the entire body. Our research institute has focused on phytotherapy, which is to say, investigation of the impact of herbs, research of the impact of cannabinoids, and applied research of synergic effects of illusions, extraction, macerates from herbs and cannabis. So this is the tradition's old phytotherapy from the history. In our institute, we treat chronic problems, and I will tell you why. The reason is that present-day medicine is excellent in terms of diagnosing the problem, excellent equipment, new methods, better every day. But official statistics show that 20% of patients have respond positively to cure. That is to say, the cause of the disease is attacked, acute state of the disease. And that means antibiotics, surgery, neurosurgery, and Czech Republic is outstanding in this respect. But 80% of patients receive only palliative disease, that is to say, treat the symptoms of the disease. And there are several reasons. One of them is that the causes of chronic long-term diseases and diagnoses have a long list of diseases, and they are a combination thereof. Statistics really say that about 30% of the chronic diagnosis, nobody knows why they appeared, what is the cause. So we really decided to target this group of patients who have long-term chronic problem, and we try to help with the treatment or using the cannabis products. In 2015, when we started to develop a preparation based on cannabis sativa, cannabinoids, and medical herbs. We prepared it to have a broad physiological impact on the patient, so that the impact would not only affect the diagnosis, but really also the cause of the chronic disease, because these problems consist in immunology, neurodegenerative disease, cardiovascular, metabolical problems, etc. And at the same time, in 2015, when we started, we formulated our vision. That is to say, use cannabis and cannabinoids, which would not change the psychology of the patient. His psychotic status would not have psychotic impact. And this clearly differed us from the fact that cannabinoids were used with fairly high content of THC. We wanted to use the group of patients who need the therapy but should not be under some mental impact. So cannabis sativa, in line with Act 168, legal, they are not psychotropic, and we will discuss this later. Our patients would regularly have their content of THC in blood. He cooperated with the Psychological Institute, and really the result was zero content. When we started to develop this preparation, and I said we started in 2015, and through to 2019 we applied the preparation to 850 patients with 63 different diagnoses, and 86.7% patients had very clear therapeutic benefit. The rest was less beneficial. In my presentation today, I would love to show you two types, two groups of diagnoses represented by 3 cases each. And these are problems in case group 1, neurodegenerative or neurological in general. Case number 1, patient, a man, who we call Mr. David. Mr. David, born in 1978. He was a university student, and when out in summer swimming in July, he jumped into shallow water and his spinal cord was injured. Luckily, his friends helped him, so that there would not be any major shortage of oxygen in the brain and further damage of the brain. But the diagnosis, after we have examined his condition, you can see the diagnosis here. Lesion, the C4-5 with subsequent spastic quadriparesis, completely paralyzed, spastic. He had cramps in his palms, upper extremities, extension, position of legs stretched, and total immobilization. He did not have, he had reduced capacity of spontaneous breathing. He was immobile and recumbent. The prognosis was that this would not change, but his loving parents found a way for him through various rehabilitation institutes where they applied void method rehabilitation, and his condition was slightly getting better. The parents of the patient, however, addressed us in 2018, which is 18 years after the injury. And it was in July, and that means 15 months ago. And this is the development of the therapy. You can see that we started on the 1st of October last year. 24th of October, which means 3+ weeks later, he said he is not so tired. Otherwise, he was very apathic, sleeping all the time. He said, I don't have to sleep 8 hours. I really had spontaneous breathing and wonderful sleep. Parents bring him to us every 2 months, and based on his response to rehabilitation, we program his further treatment. In January, 2.5 months later, the rehabilitation nurse said that his reflex response on lower extremities in the pattern of provoked movement increased, which was encouraging. So it was really a motoric response, very interesting, because the motoric response is controlled by the brain, central nervous system. And because of the injury, the patient should never have responded by such motoric response. A surprise. And this is a photograph of Mr. David during therapy using Voigt method. And the case continued like this. David, although he was a young man, due to all sorts of problems in treatment, metabolically his body suffered. He was losing hair. And in February 2019, after 4 months of Cannasan, there was no more hair loss, spontaneous defecation and voiding regularly without supposition. In August 2019, we really took time waiting for clear and objective improvement of this condition, and that was really August this year, 10 months later. Active movement pattern of the normal type of movement started at the age of 2 to 3 months. A body starts to move, but he had a brain injury, and his brain was not able to pass signal via spinal cord to the nerves to perform some sort of motion. In September 2019, which means about a year later, after Mr. David had differentiated movement of upper extremities, like standard movement patterns. Let me explain it. Mr. David, who was unable to move his hands after a year of our preparation, can really raise one hand up, the other hand down, and this is conscious movement. It is produced by response. That is to say, the central nervous system passes this information to the periphery, and this response we would never expect to be possible for a person with spinal injury. In October this year, which actually is a week ago, when we met him last time, and his parents, of course, he said that he feels that his upper part of the body is stronger, and he can really control it by his will. Before, this is 17 years after injury, and when he was unable at all to move. While after a year of Cannasan, he is now sitting on a wheelchair, but he also works 3 or 4 hours a day on the computer. He can really operate the keyboard. He can repair the computers, because he was a student of mathematics, and he does all this without any special aids for hands. He has very fine motorics. He has no respiratory problems, and they were present right after the accident. Case number 2. That's again a patient whom we call John. He was born in 1972, so also quite a young man. And in 2013, in February, he was found unconscious with vomits and cramps. You can see the diagnosis. It was a brain stroke. He lost consciousness, and there was massive bleeding in the brain. And here, the aneurysm was covered, but on the 26th of April 2013, he was investigated thoroughly, and the result was that rehabilitation perhaps would be a way forward. During investigation, his eyes were closed. He would only eat mashed food. He couldn't swallow. He kept food in his mouth too long. He was very apathic. He couldn't communicate even by eyes. He simply spastic tone. His fingers on the hand were all in cramps, and when trying to stretch the fingers, they would rather break than stretch. And the same applied to lower extremity. The toes were also in cramps. So Babinski negative reflex on both sides. So the final diagnosis was quadriparesis, similar, like Mr. David, total paralysis of the body, more severe on the right side, no talking.
His mum is a pharmacist, so she visited us in spring 2019, and we agreed to administer or for him to start taking our product. He's in the long-term care hospital or at the long-term care department. His mum has a diary, she calls it a visit diary, where she writes down each and every visit and the progress or lack of progress, responses or lack of response on the part of her son. And this is what we took out just to show you an example. 1 month after the onset of Cannasan administration, he started to establish eye contact with people around him. So when someone talked to him or approached him, he at least moved his eyes in that direction. Consciously, he doesn't move at all, but at least he looked in the respective direction. And since he had been married, he had children, of course, in the meantime they grew up and they came to visit him. Once they were told he would respond, and he lost his lethargical, full, so to say, helplessness expression. He lost that. So on the 30th of July, the palm and sole spasms were weakened or relieved, so they mentioned to, so to say, straighten his fingers and toes. And I told you that he had such spasms that there was a danger of a fracture. Now it was all relaxed, the fingers were relaxed, and he suffered from 3 to 4 millimeters thick sores, both on palms and soles. And on the 30th of August, which means 3 months, after 3 months on Cannasan, he would sit at a table and pick up pieces of fruit. Before that, he couldn't do that, you know. So yet another benefit was that he got rid of bed sores, because though he had been, his position was constantly changed, he did suffer from bed sores. Now, the therapy then continued, and on the 20th of September, the staff, the nurses, said he's pretty tall, 190 centimeters and 86 kilograms in weight. Or when they changed the bed linen or were changing his clothes, there would have to be 2 nurses. But he was so active once he started moving or relaxing and tightening his hands or palms, that he would seem to say pull up on the bed, sort of a hoist, or and that was enough then for one nurse to take care of him. On the 30th of September, yet another month after, twice a day administration, he would sit at the table, grasp for a cup of coffee and drink, and wouldn't spill it. If you think of it, for 5.5 years, he couldn't lift his arm or hand, and now after 4 months on Cannasan, he could sit on the product. He can pick up a cup with coffee, drink it, and with his second hand he holds a piece of pie or tart, eats it, swallows it, chews it. We have got a couple of videos at hand which we wish to show you. And you will also see that he can catch a flying ball. His mum is, I don't know, 1 meter or 2 meters in front of him, and a smaller or bigger ball would throw at him. And this guy, who had totally helpless, paralyzed hands and arms, can catch it now. So just imagine. On the 20th of October, again, the fine motor skills have improved because, he will pick up a piece of tangerine or pieces of tangerine and eat it, and he will actually divide the tangerine into pieces, slices. And he speaks in a low voice, okay, but still he can count from 1 to 10. Case number 3 considers to 3 persons in 1,000. That's the ALS. This was a man, the patient was a man born in 1942 who at the beginning of November 2018 started to have problems in oral cavity. He thought he had some problem with his teeth. He got the feeling of sort of stuck tongue or what, and he could hardly talk. And he was a neurologist, actually uncle. She thought he had suffered from a stroke, but it wasn't a stroke. There was no such diagnosis, but the diagnosis was actually, he was diagnosed only in February 2019, that is ALS bulbiform, which is with speech impairment, and it all starts with a lack of control of any muscles, chest muscles. So the prognosis, the progress is extremely rapid, and he gradually suffocates, as a matter of fact. So he was examined, and the diagnosis these are the findings of the examination with this lady doctor, neurologist. We decided to start the therapy in the month of August. In the month of July, the red, like paralyzed tongue, problem with speech, speaks poorly, and poor speech and slow speech, problems with swallowing, breathing. So they were afraid of him getting suffocated. Well, they started administering him the Cannasan in the month of July. They are doctors who have many years of experience, so they started recording the changes, writing down. So in several weeks, he ceased to have swallowing problems or difficulties. He would breathe more easily, and the point was to keep him alive His tongue moved better, was better, more controllable, so to say, and he would breathe normally. Then he started talking at a standard pace and volume. He could communicate just like before the onset of the disease, the 30th of September. They write down the following. He takes an active interest in the administered product, meaning that he asks for it at certain intervals, and he breathes freely and is full of optimism. As I've said, his niece is a doctor, neurologist. She wanted to have some second opinion, therefore she had him examined at a different hospital or simply center. And it clearly says on the 20th of October that he has improved a lot since year on year as against the condition a year ago. So the effect is system-wide effect, and it does not only, it doesn't have effect on one part of the body only. Another case or type of diagnosis, these are persons or patients with diabetes mellitus second type, meaning DM, simply diabetes second type. So apart from metabolic problems and many other problems, the trouble is that if anything happens, just a small injury or in this case, she, stepped on a thorn during a walk, and it, so to say, punched her big toe, root of the big toe on her left foot. And it does not heal in case of diabetic patients. After a year and a half, it progressed, and you'll see several pictures of the condition. She also she had a very nice, caring family. They could also afford very complicated and costly treatment. Yet the condition hasn't improved. And I'll show you what it looked like. This is reality, and it does happen often. I'm sure you have some friend or acquaintance or a family member suffering from this disease. So this is the root of the big toe of her left foot. And or her leg. It was before, that was the baseline situation before Cannasan was administered. It is called Tylome, and it was obvious that it would grow worse or worse. And twice daily she was administered the product, and now the patient, apart from repeated antibiotics treatment, had also colloid silver. They did try everything and anything to contain or stop the Tylome progression, but she was at high risk of an amputation. So this first picture is after a month, and then at 14 roughly days interval. Look at the wound, new tissue grows. We don't use the product to make it heal the surface only, but it stimulates angioplastic phenomenon. That means vascular system growth in the wound, and that by fresh blood supply, nutrients, that is cornerstones or building blocks of the body, appear. So this is a picture after 1 month of administration, and at the end of August, it was as tiny, the wound was as tiny as this. The peripheral neuropathic pain also was relieved. This is what it looked like after 3 months on the product. So obviously it healed fully, and the lady left under several naturally, when she had this style on, she couldn't go on holiday, but then they went to the sea, I guess, in Bulgaria, and she could walk along the beach. So this is the next case, a male, born 1960. Again, diabetes mellitus, second type patient, starting with 2015. In the period 15 to 17, he had a recipal that is between the ankle, and there was a repetitive antibiotics treatment. In October 2018, necrosis in the crucis part of lower extremity occurred. Massive exudate was formed, a neuropathic pain he was suffering from. Even though he's a person with excellent medical care, the so far taken treatment did not help, and it would not stall or put an end to the growth of ulcer or ulcers, crucis or leg ulcer, whichever. So these are the pictures of necrosis. That means the beginning of disruption or degradation of the tissue. Then the deep ulcer occurs, and it deteriorates the patient's health condition. Now, this picture shows the therapy, course of the therapy. He started taking the product on the 15th of October 2018, twice a day, and then on the 1st of December, roughly after 6 weeks, the exudate actually was no more developing or progressing. The vascular supply was obviously corrective or had a corrective effect. Now, at the end of January, the patient noticed gradual growth of a new tissue. He called it ice breaking, or what. When I show you the picture again, this is the necrosis, and on this necrotic tissue, bursts or cracks, so to say, occurred where the new tissue started to grow. On the 25th of February, by palpation, there were no pathological changes of the tissue obvious. And in a certain way, all the processes are then triggered. So the patient is not allowed to have anyone touch on it or anyone touching it. But we did recommend the manual lymphatic massage, since it did help to wash out the residues of toxins from the degraded tissues. And this is a picture, or these are pictures, so to say, of the patient I talked about, the effect, as he calls it, the ice breaking. Obviously, the highly necrotic skin now shows pink, fresh tissue growth, and this is what the healed leg and foot looks like on the 1st of May 2019. You can see new tissue. It's nice and pink, well supplied. Now I'd like to thank you for your attention and for following attentively the cases. I believe this is worth thinking about, because the patients who suffer from some chronic diagnosis, and of course we have another diagnosis concerning immune systems, and these conditions are not really well treated. There are efforts, of course. Doctors try to treat them properly, but somehow it doesn't show on the patient. So frequently their problems tend to worsen, or they tend to deteriorate rather than improve. Hopefully this was a food for thought or inspiration for more intensive cooperation with medical doctors. We cooperate with, 50 doctors here from abroad, and we collect or gather these success stories, which sometimes do take time but help cure the patient. And if you take a case like 17 years in case of Mr. David, in a dreadful situation or condition which hasn't changed a bit, and then the progress and the improvement is immense, and it's not the patient who suffers, it's the whole family, friends, everyone. Once again, thank you for your attention, and I do hope it